Back to the Crafty Conversation with me, Marcus Sharrod. I'm absolutely thrilled today to be joined by Dr. Sally Needham. Sally and I met a couple of years ago now when we spoke on the same sort of docket at a conference at Millfield School. And I've kind of reconnected on LinkedIn and I've followed her successes ever since. I really connected with the message that she brought to that particular conference and her work in neuroscience, and particularly around contemplative neuroscience and how that applies to elite performance. Her PhD is in elite performance, where she looked at the application of these methods into academy football systems. Sally's got a really varied and interesting background in football with the Football Association. She's an A licensed coach, is, I would say, informed certainly by the fact that you're a Thrive practitioner. The Thrive approach being one that's very centralizes cognitive, emotional, social, neurological development in young people. Sally's now like to go to the Euros with Norway as part of the staff, which is just this incredible opportunity. Euro 2025 kicking off in the next couple of weeks over in Switzerland, where Norway look pretty good in Group A with the hosts, and Iceland and Finland as well, and hoping to potentially progress out of the group stage and have a hell of a few weeks out there in Switzerland. Sally, really appreciate you being here. Thank you. I laughed to myself because I remember standing in a room that was pretty full of people actually at that Millfield conference. You were a keynote speaker. I was a sort of dib-dab, choose to go there or there, and there was an element I was talking about belonging. And there were some elements in my presentation that sort of brought in some neuroscience, and I could see you at the back of the room having just heard you speak and thought, oh no, well, that to absolutely massacre the keynote speaker's kind of expertise here. I mean, luckily you were sort of nodding along.
I certainly was. It was good. It was good.
As I always do at the start of a Crafty Conversation episode, I'd love to ask you what you consider your craft to be.
Yeah, I would say probably trying to understand people. So I started off in coaching, did all my badges as you said, and when I worked in the FA at the time, so I did 13 years at the FA, one as a coach in the 5 to 11 skills program, which were amazing, and then I went into coach development. I definitely prefer the coach development than the coaching, I have to say. People always say to me now, do you miss being on the grass? And I don't really. I get on it now and again, but it's not an area that I miss. I was really interested all the time in around like group dynamics, and I was on the pilot of the Advanced Youth Award in 2012, and it really kind of opened my eyes to the psych and social elements of the game, and I really wanted to start to delve down more into it. So you talk about like confidence and emotional control and all this stuff, and I just didn't get the answers of how and why and things. So like you said, I went and did a Thrive course away from the FA. My best friend, she's high up in Thrive and does practitioner, and she said to me once, I think you're looking at this player's behaviour all wrong. And so it gave me a different lens to look at some stuff. So I went and did it and then come back, and as you said, I did an MA in play with Pete Sturgis at Centre for Research in Early Childhood and applying it, and then another master's, and then left the FA when COVID hit, and started at Sheffield. And Jack Lester, who kind of managed at the time, gave me the opportunity in a massive kind of blank canvas and confidence boost to just literally like go and just try and see if this works in performance. And I didn't know if it did. I had a hunch that it would do, but nothing major. So that's why I did the professional doctorate, to kind of have the credibility, and also it forced me to bring the work together for evidence in it. Otherwise, I probably would have just done it. So that took, a good 4 years to pull all that together and put the project in. So I think when you come back to what you say about what is my craft, my journey's taken me in so different levels that it's all contributed. I never was one of those person that's like, right, I want to be X or I want to do this. Like, I've just kind of gone with what I needed at the time to add into my toolbox. And so now I feel like my craft, or where my lens is very much human development performance. So understanding the brain and the body, understanding the human being in front of us, understanding what's happened in childhood, then how that plays out, understanding how then group dynamics sit and fit, the power of language. Like you said, my professional doctorate sits on affective and contemplative neuroscience, affective being the understanding of the nervous system. And I use a theory called polyvagal theory, Stephen Porges' work. And that's what mine sits on. And then the contemplative tools add on to it. So you have to start with self-awareness, self-regulation, but then what tools then do you build in? So I think for me now, it's very much looking at the individual, very much looking at how does that sit in an ecosystem or an academy system or within a system around a player. But yeah, I would say that I've come away from the coaching and I'm more into the actual coach development, the teaching, the understanding, the learning, and that side of now trying to implement things into human development performance.
It's fascinating work. It really is. And I think, you and I, having had experiences in the elite game, varied and over a long period of time, know that football's a long way back when it comes to any kind of contemplative, I don't know, more Eastern kind of thought around the brain body dynamic. And I think to bring the work to light with the voice that you now carry with the doctorate, I think it is so powerful. How would you rate, if you had to scale it on 1 to 10, 1 being terrible and 10 being, it's as good as it can be right now? Like, where is elite sport at with the lens that you bring?
I think it's really hard for me to say it because of, I don't know the pockets that are happening. Like, I've had conversations lately and I'm like, oh, right. So, and I've been pleasantly surprised with like what's happening in other sports as well. My lens of, from a football perspective, from what you just asked me the question, I think we're probably around about a 6, I think, in that sense, 6, 7, because when I've done the research, the biggest thing is there's not the link up between the off the field and the on the field stuff. And the coaches have got the most social capital. So the education really needs to be embedded in the coaches and then the rest of the staff. So it's a long prolonged. The element of traditional psychology has its place. There is not good or bad. It's literally how it's integrated, I found. Like, that's what we judge it on, how integrated it is, and how open people are. There's a niche for every bits in the market. But I think that the joint approach is key. I think from an effective and contemplative neuroscience stuff, people used to say to me all the time, like, how do you get the boys to like do breath work in the morning and journal and all this? As soon as you give them the understanding of the why, the science, you can see it in them. They'll go, oh, yeah, that's me. And you give them, right, yeah, totally normal. This is what happens in your body and your brain. You understanding it and then using this tool or tools to help support that will then help you for performance. It also helps you off the pitch, because that's what the research showed when I did it. It's a lot of the stuff off the pitch, understanding yourself more and in relationships, and especially the coaching staff, that were a big thing for them. So I think once you start to give them the why and they understand that this is totally normal, they can work with it. For me, sometimes sports psychology or elite performance and understanding contemplative and all like that, you need the buy-in. But to get the buy-in, you've got to show that it works, or you've got to have that one person that wants to do it, and then it's a ripple effect. And that's what I had really in Sheffield. I had one boy that's actually ripping it up at the minute at the Euros 21s, and one boy that bought into it, and then he started doing well. So everybody's like, oh, like human behaviour is, like, what's he doing differently? And then the coaches start to see it. But you had open-minded people as well in that academy. You had some exceptionally brilliant coaches that played themselves and were like, oh, is that why that happened? And you could say, right, watch him now, look at him, he goes into freeze response. Oh my God, yeah, he does. So once you start to know the science and how it applies into the coaching and be able to recognise it, you got the buy-in and you got the link. I think at the minute, my research and also the research that I did for the PhD is showing that there's a mismatch in bringing the theory to the practical, and especially in football, aligning the off-field stuff to the on the field, and we're not getting it with it for me.
Yeah, I think with, we're talking about elite performers here, and especially at the level you work at, the two football clubs you've been associated with are both Premier League, and presumably, I know Brentford are Cat 1, presumably Sheffield United must be a Category 1 academy.
No,
they're not. Oh, right, okay.
Brentford are Cat 2 at the minute because they've just redone their academy, so they will go to Cat 1, but they have just.
But I mean, the way the club thinks is, they're advanced. They're certainly as contemporary as it comes in the way the club thinks and is governed, aren't they? But I think coaches, players, like you say, they're open-minded if it's going to make them better, because they live and die by the game, by whether they're selected on Saturday, by whether they get a contract, by whether they continue as a coach. And almost all coaches don't continue; they get sacked. I think, to be able to play to that nature and demonstrate this could impact your performance, then that open-mindedness is bound to be there.
I think going back to your question again, and I said this the other day, some academies do yoga but frame it as recovery. You've got the odd coaches that have seen some of my work on the advanced youth work, because I deliver on that, and really took it and gone, right, let's explore this, but they're one on their own in a big system that's then like you have other people going, well, what are you doing that for, or that don't work. So I think you're totally right. When I were at Sheffield, I had the buy-in from the top down, and it was implemented and it was talked about. We had a common language. It was very open. The culture was that. Same at Brentford now. Got the buy-in, the staff. They're very forward thinking. They are that. They're wanting to do something different, and that's what we had at Sheffield. We couldn't compete with Man United, Man City, so it's something different. But it's not different. It's just, and this is why I used to say with Eki all the time, like, when you talk about a good coach, you know what's a good coach. You know intuitively around when they need an arm, when they don't need an arm, getting down to their level, using your voice, noticing behaviour, managing the group. You know it all.
They're instinctive polyvagal theorists.
It's just that you know it. It's instinctive. You know it. Good coaches are very highly skilled at it. What the neuroscience gives us in the affective and contemplative, especially affective stuff, is around the why. So when you start coming to like threat and safety and co-regulation and neuroception, it's a massive thing. Now, once you start to give that understanding and you put it into somebody, they then acknowledge it a lot more. They're looking for it a lot more, and it's more purposeful in their interactions. When they're more purposeful in their interactions and you can tie things up, we start to have neural development. So neuroplasticity is where we have our change. So as soon as we start to bring things into conscious awareness and we repeat it, and it's done by a group of people with an understanding of the why, you have neuroplasticity, we have no change. But you used to get it all the time, like, I want them to talk more, or they need more confidence. And we have a flippant comment then of like, just gotta have more confidence, or, get a first touch and work your way into the game. Doesn't help when you're in a nervous system dysregulation, or when you've got 30,000 people.
Shut down.
So it's like, well, how do you actually neurologically get a change in them? And that's by understanding the why, understanding the tools, understanding how it all links, and bringing it into conscious awareness so that we can change it neuroplastically. And so that's a big thing for me of why, like you say, it's worked in them two academies, and it's working with Norway Women, and it's working in my other business with my business partner, because they're forward thinking and they see it and they understand it. When you don't understand it, it's a different ballgame.
I think the other thing is, when you're talking about elite athletes, and therefore they, by virtue of their talent, have experienced a flow state where you can ask them, how does it feel to be just in your element, just performing, just doing your thing, which is in essence a ventral vagal state, right? As in, like, you are in just a state of pure presence and consciousness. And if you can go, that's it, that's the top of the ladder, then it's like, whoa, okay. But I think that's almost where your work becomes to try and apply that. Say you came and tried to apply that work here at my school, really traditional public boarding school with the staff. I think you get less than you would from these players, because I'm not sure as many people fully understand and appreciate what a flow state looks and feels like.
Yeah.
Is that how do you is that a fair observation, would you say?
Yeah, I think there's also the different domains, isn't there? So I get a lot asked in schools about things. There's levels into the scales of what you scale it up or down to. So for me, like in schools with teachers, the behaviour manager just having an understanding of behaviour and also their understanding of their self-awareness working with children is the biggest thing for me. When you're in elite performance, understanding my regulation, understanding if it's in a team sport, the head coach's regulation or the individual players, that's the real key. When you give them the understanding of it, like you say, you get more buy-in. I think a lot of top elite performers get past the age of 25, 26 when their nervous system settles down and starts to understand themselves better. Some will have the science behind it, but I think majority won't. So we talk about flow state. You've got to have a high hit of dopamine on a flow state. So how do you get your dopamine ready so that when you're in performance, you can use your dopamine levels and you hit flow state? And a lot of players will say to me all the time, I need to be in flow all the time. Like, you physiologically can't be in flow all the time. So we have to know when we dial up, when we dial down. We also have to know, like you said, like what's our ventral vagal state? Do we need to be a little bit higher? So we're dialing up. So the fact that we're not tipping into fight flight, but that's our optimal level. Or do we have to be really calm? Because calmer we are, calmer we think, and some players need to be really calm. So they start to understand it a lot more. So what I'm trying to say is I think the levels of understanding are very much needed for where you're going to sit the work. And like I said about schools, like the thing for me is there's massive in corporate, in sickness that are not coming to work, that you could do the neuroscience stuff and the tools that you start to have neurological development. There's then the stuff in schools with children that's going through adolescent brain.
Yeah. Wow.
Exams, transition periods. You talk about lost circuit in your brain that's happening, and then you've got the elite end that you're talking around. You're building up to a tournament football that's totally different to normal season football. You've got Olympics, you've got this, but the thing for me is as soon as they start to understand self, they can't get rid of their nervous system and their fight, flight, freeze system. It's their protectors. They can't get rid of the lost circuit or the rage circuit or the play circuit. So how do we understand and work with it, what we've got, to get optimal level? And know sometimes we might dial up and dial down, but really understand how I'm feeling and sitting with what I feel and then working with it. We are bottom up, top down species, and the problem for me sometimes is when we come to psychology or some of the interventions that we give our players, it's very top up. Same as in the States when they use mental coaches. It's very top, but realistically, who's working the nervous system, and this is more.
So you're to reframe that so that I think I understand, but for listeners, you're talking about top up being all cognitive, and sort of bottom up being actually we've got to go into our body first. So like a somatic response. How can I control my somatic response, activate parasympathetic nervous system, and then create that more conscious state? Is that?
Yeah. So as a human being, we are bottom up. So we go emotionally to cognitive, and we're cognitive to emotions. Physiological responses infect our psychological state and vice versa, and what language we tell us ourselves infects our psychological state, all that. But what we sometimes work off a lot of time is we go mental, so we just go neck and above, and what's working cognitively, we need to, like you said, go into our body, because physiologically when we go into fight flight and it's all connected, our brain shuts. Survivors. our muscles around our eyes stop. So we talk about scanning. You can't scan, you can't plan, predict. You're totally surviving. Now, the key is you're going to get into that state at some point in games or in a competition or whatever. It's how you recognise it and be able to move back. That's the key. That's the elite performance end. If you get stuck in that, we've got an issue. And if you feel that you have to manage it, we've got an issue, because you will end up with out. So there's an element of understanding and then being able to flip, but being really real about how you feel. But like you said, really understanding this physiological response, where do you feel it? And some players all said to me, I don't feel it at all. Well, that's a classic example of freeze response, because they don't feel it. So yeah, it's about working with brain and body, and that's yoga. When we talked about yoga earlier, that's an amazing thing to be able to connect back into yoga if you frame it right for people. But a lot of it, use it as a flexibility tool.
Yeah, rather than you've got to go into yourself, because there's lots of elements of this that are proprioceptive and balance related, and so if you don't go into yourself, you're not going to be able to do it.
And your breath. Breath work, and your breath is your remote control of your body. Simple as that. So the more that you can, and it come out so much in the PhD, the more that you can understand different types of breath work in different situations that you are in and what works for you, you can have control and the remote control of your body. Simple as that.
Yeah, that, I mean, lots of people have probably heard of that kind of like box breath element, but what else is available? Like, how do you work with performers to sort of dial themselves up? Is that the sort of quick nose breathe and then big exhale?
So box breathing is for us what we used to do off the pitch to develop and strengthen their vagus nerve.
Yep.
So that were kind of like what you did off the pitch. And then on the pitch, there's the physiological side, which you see a lot of players doing anyway like that. But there's a better one of like inhaling and then a long exhale.
Yeah. When
we used to do the breath work for cold water, or if players were struggling a little bit with anxiety, it was in through the nose, but then a longer exhale out through like a straw breath. And then you said, you wanted to energize because you felt it. It were a longer inhale and then a shorter exhale out.
Yeah.
So it's like a longer inhale through the nose and then a shorter exhale. So you're firing up your heart.
Yeah.
This is a brief pause in today's crafted conversation to talk about how the crafted concept, the overarching business that supports the crafted conversation, both in newsletter and in podcast form, can best support you in your performance environments. The crafted concept has experience working in the education and elite sports sectors through performance coaching for individuals or for teams, the learning environment, by focusing on those three pillars of the crafted concept of performance: learning environment, learning design, and learning critique. Contact me directly because I can help you, as I have done on many occasions, developing a sense of cohesion within the team. Performance coaching aims to drive individuals and teams to excel. And as a performance coach, I am an expert in areas of teaching and learning, instructional design, motivational psychology, team development, performance culture and environment, and performance mindset. It's my job to generate activities, use questioning, listening, observing, probing techniques to deliberately seek feedback and present opportunities for lateral thinking and inspire growth and ideas for you as an individual or for the performance of the team and the collective. The crafted concept is your accountability partner, is your critical observer. I'm able to draw upon experiences as an expert teacher and instructor and as an expertly qualified executive coach, performance coach with over 100 hours worth of coaching experience. As a coach developer in elite sport, I can support and guide coaches through the complexities of your professional development, of your professional environment, offering structure and assisting you in refining your skills through learning environment, learning design, and learning critique. Contact me directly, marcus@thecraftedconcept.co.uk, or look me up on LinkedIn, Marcus Sharrod.
Yeah, incredible. And like you say, I love that phraseology, the remote control of the body. I introduced a sort of breath work over the course of a couple of lessons that we kind of put into a contemplative scheme of work here with kids. Honestly, the my staff were nervous about it, and I kind of role modelled it, and that's so totally understandable. Honestly, the reaction, they were kind of going, how are you going to get through 45 minutes worth of a lesson doing that? It was beautiful.
Yeah.
The energy that came out of these kids who just went completely inward. I mean, for listeners or for yourself, like being every single kid that's at this school lives here. They're all boarders. There's over 1,000 of them. They're away from home. The way their day is structured is no different to it was in 1870. So it's just about keeping them busy. They are ragged from pillar to post, bless them. Yeah. And then they have their dinner, go to house and do homework for an hour and a half until 9 p.m. Yeah. Not overly designed to support the teenage brain. So to give them this 45, 50 minutes of just peace. Yeah. It is the most stunning thing. It's probably it's one of the most enduring kind of wow motivational practitioner moments I've had in my 12-year career.
Yeah.
Certainly from like a kit on P perspective. Incredible. And I bet it's the same with the lads. You've got these big, these dopey footballers, bless them, they love the game, they turn up, they just want to do well, they're all desperate to be in the team, act in the big one, and then, I bet it's not dissimilar.
No, it's not, and we talk to them all the time around, like, you've got an accelerator and a brake, and that's where you've got the nervous system in theory, like, we use that. And we say to coaches all the time, like, if you want them to be on their accelerator for, like, an hour and a half session, they need to be able to come off their brake. So that being able to dial up, dial down. So going and doing a training session, then coming and doing some breath work, and then going back into training in the afternoon or doing some breath work at night for them to help the sleep, which is performance. We know that learning happens through our sleep and not while we're doing it. So it's a massive thing. It's just so much key that we want to try and sometimes push them all the time, but that's too much on the accelerator. You use too much efficiency, and we know about vagal tone, vagal efficiency. They need to be able to move from accelerator to brake. Breath work is one of the great ones to be able to then down regulate, pull them back into parasympathetic nervous system, and then able to then go do something then, in the afternoon or whatever. We know the nervous system's different as well in afternoon to the morning, and so there's loads of things to work with. The boys loved it. The boys absolutely loved it. It was the education with the staff, so the fact they just didn't think that they were having, a nap for 20 minutes or it's just something, but you got to where they knew that they needed that to be able to then push on the accelerator.
Yeah.
It's breathwork's a big one for me, really big one.
I'd be interested to know, as you're saying that, I'm talking about it being dialed up, so the accelerator's on, you go out and do a training session. I'm thinking of teams that are you're going to have this to a degree out of the Euros, although the way you train in those events is different. But everyone's going to be going back into pre-season next couple of weeks, going to be doing morning AM, PM sessions, doubling up, things like that. And in my mind, I'm going, pre-season's probably unless you get a new coach in mid-season, pre-season is when the most amount of learning needs to happen around, I don't know, game strategy, etc. And this can be applied to any sport. So this is rugby players as well, or whoever, hockey players, netballers. But putting my educational psychology lens on it, what do you, having gone from dialed up training session, dialed down breathwork, yoga, whatever it was, do you think if they then went from that to classroom session, and then there was some questioning about what had happened in the morning, would that support their learning? Because they've gone from up to down to then being kind of having that classroom element?
It depends. So our nervous system's in the most rest and digest between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock. So if they've gone dialed up and then you dial them down, if then they're coming into an afternoon classroom session, I'd want some really strong high beats on.
Yeah.
So you're having like an engagement task. So when we talk about like arrival activities or engagement tasks and things, you're basically acting your play circuit, which activates your ventral vagal. So you're getting them ready for social connection and learning. if we don't activate and work with what the nervous system is like in an afternoon, a lot of that learning, they're just lethargic and they don't take it in. So it's really dependent on what time of the day you're going into, what you've got. So some especially younger ones, some of them will be morning, some will be more late learners. If they're going for adolescent brain, what's happening in the morning before 10 and all that. So there's loads of different factors with it. I think for me, it's around the stimuli, around getting their nervous system ready, but having an understanding of, if it's in an afternoon, I might have to do this. If it's in the morning, I might have to do this. Or do we take them outside into nature and hit their dopamine levels before then they come back inside? And there's all that side of it. So the double sessions are a big thing for me with our players going back now into pre-season that me and Matt work with, business partner, is around how they've kind of stayed in. They've had some downtime, of course they do. They need to kind of have that cognitively downtime as well as and see social people that they might be away from. But we've tried to keep them topped up. So we talk about like oil and grass and like keeping the cup topped up. So they need to have kept their cup topped up in these feel-good chemicals, but also stick to a certain routine. And I think then when you come back into routine, you sometimes struggle to get back into routine. So you need to kind of like have that week or two before to start getting back into your daily habits, into your routine, because that then helps you when you get back into pre-season, the amount of load you've got, amount of cognitive load you have as well. So that sleep element of the cognitive load and down regulating is a really big thing as well. So what we put in for them to start that when they get back into pre-season, it's just not pre-season and this is it.
Yeah. What do you think is the most important message from your work, if you were to kind of create one salient message that could be best applied to those working as elite coaches or as educators? What's the thing that people need to keep be aware of the most to start to support the social, emotional, psychological development of those that they're working with?
I would say for me is the understanding of the effective neuroscience. So for me, the understanding of their brain-body connection, the role of co-regulation, mutual regulation, self-regulation is really key. So I would say that, because we talk about coach relationships and creating a safe environment and all like that, which is obviously very highly researched and very fundamental to an elite performance. For me, there's another layer underneath that around we have to understand the reasons why. So for me, the understanding of the effective neuroscience of the brain and the body, how this plays out in co-regulation, like I said, mutual regulation, self-regulation, it's really key. And we used to say to our foundation phase coaches all the time, we said it to them all, but especially foundation phase, like you need to connect before you correct. So before you start to teach, you've got to connect. And there's the element of, getting to know them and having all this and your social engagement system being good and all that and creating that safety. But the science is the kind of paramount to understand that around like threat response system, social engagement system, use of his face, use of his tone, like the elements. And that's what I said before. The intuitively and good coaches know it all. Pick up on things, know about the face, the smile, all like that we get taught in all those coaching courses. But understanding the science behind it, I think, is the key for me. And I think that's been the big breakthrough when working with players and coaches.
Yeah, that's really interesting. This will make you smile. I'm going to have a couple of trainee teachers in my department next year. I was sat down with one of them last week, and I kind of was projecting ahead to the kind of like what's coming up from September and how different it's going to be leading their own classes and this, that, and the other. And she said, she came out with that phrase that's pretty prevalent in my world around don't smile till Christmas. I don't know if you've heard that with teachers, and my response was, that is the biggest load of bollocks I've ever heard in my life. don't bring that to my department. I said, because not one child is going to listen or learn from you until you've connected with them and they go, oh, okay, this person is kind, cares about me as an individual, knows my freaking name, and yeah, is able to make me feel safe.
Yeah, well, that's it. It all comes back to safety. Like, I talk about it all the time. If you are not safe in your body, you can't form relationships. You can't sit and listen and learn. You don't learn. Like,
No.
your body's continuously, your nervous system and your brain is always looking for threat, internally, externally, environmentally. So when you talk around them softer skills, but then the big thing for me is the safety. If they haven't got the safety, they're not going to be able to learn and engage and build them relationships, which then means you can challenge them because they know that you care. And it's same, it comes back to neuroscience. We've got a care circuit in his brain. Part of the care circuit, understanding and using name and showing you care, will help to create safety. It's all the same. It just comes back to the science.
Yeah, and that leads me really nicely into my next question, because I think with post-COVID, I think there's a really positive psychology, actually, positive psychology, well-being, sense of safety, psych safety, all these kind of like brilliant theories that are so proven and valuable for human performance at any level. However, I caveat that with the challenge that there are times in the environments that you are working in when players, elite athletes, have to be held to account for things. Coaches have to present that more stereotypical side of leadership. So with potentially the role of negative feedback or critical feedback. And I wonder what your response in when we know that polyvagal theory tells us that's your main lens, that the more that we can understand ourselves and kind of neuroception, interoception, etc., how does one approach the times when you need to dig people out?
Yeah, really good question. And I always come back to this, and we say it a lot. Caring doesn't just mean that you have to just be all nice and put your arm around them. Caring is giving them the honest feedback. That's what caring is, that you are, because difficult conversations are hard to have. So if I care about you, I'm willing to have a difficult conversation with you. So we talk about caring being this softer, more skill, but actually me giving you the feedback is caring. Also the element of language. Language is really key for me. So how we phrase the first bit and frame it up for them, what happens in their nervous system is really key. So what we can frame it that keeps them regulated, or we can put them into fight, flight, or freeze, and we go into defensive behaviour straight away. The also element of where you do it. So we've talked about this all the time. So your body stores experiences. So from a teacher perspective, when you get called into a teacher's office, your nervous system will probably presume that it's going to be a negative. So your nervous system, without you consciously aware, is already getting ready for this threat and defensive response to protect you, to keep you safe, because you've had a negative experience. So when you try and hold all these conversations in a different space that's not, and you use your language, and you've also got the element of you frame it up for them, you can start to have more honest conversation. There's the element as well as, like, what's the boundaries in this team? So for example, in an international team, you might have certain boundaries that the girls set, the players should set. And then it's like, right, well, what's going to get us to our end goal? And if that's accountability, okay, and if that's challenging behaviours or challenging performances, perfect, it's needed and it's healthy. Again, comes back to how we do it is the key. And a lot of people struggle with, when we have a rupture in relationship, struggle with the repair, and the repair is the strongest part of in the relationship, because that's what shows that you're willing to come back and to understand it. And I think sometimes that's missed out. So coming back to your thing, there's a whole host of little bits, but it still comes back to understanding the nervous system and the safety. But then there's layers on that. So language, where do you do it? what is caring, what's the accountability, what does people actually want, do they want to be told honestly, or is it the fact sometimes they want this, how it's going to get delivered. But I think we get caught up in it's got to be caring, and there's high challenge, high support. Yeah, there is, but you've got to also you've got to make them aware of things as well, because sometimes they're actually not aware of it. So to actually help them for performance, and if you've got enough in the bag with them that you've been there, that you've been there, that you've been there, that you've been there, and you've gave them that connection, and they know that you care, that they're ready, that you want them to challenge because that shows you care, then they see it from a different lens.
Yeah. So presumably you probably draw on a parenting metaphor, particularly with coaches who probably in lots of cases are parents.
Yeah. And as well, you've got your team dynamics, haven't you? So me, message is totally different to the head coach giving a message, because the head coach got more social capital.
Yeah.
But it's who gives the messages, what's the relationships like, and who's got them relationships with certain players that need to be given it. And a little bit more as well, and autonomy back onto the players.
Yeah.
You know,
for sure.
How do you want these messages given?
Yeah, I think that's all around, it's easy to chuck a buzzword of culture, but that is, if we actually extrapolate what culture is, it's that, isn't it? It's agreed sense of what our boundaries are within this team. And to achieve that, you have to have had a sense of agency and choice and voice from those within the team. And then that becomes easier to hold them to account. You said about language. Do you mean we're not talking about kind of giving some sort of false or contrived praise and then delivering the bad news, and they're not like a shit sandwich, basically? You mean you're talking language from a growth mindset perspective, like power of yet and that kind of stuff, or
not as such? We use that language, but it's more of what words you use to start with. So we use a lot of like wings, so wondering, imagine, notice, guessing, seeing. And certain situations will depend on how you frame it. So say a selection, you're going to a tournament football and a player doesn't get selected. It's like, well, what's that player's like and wants to know it like? And then it's like, right, do you frame it up like this is going to be disappointing news, or just say, I'm just going to get straight to it for you because I know you like it straight.
Yeah.
Just to let you know this. But when we talk around language in a general kind of performance academy or whatever structure it is, the understanding of like, oh, I've noticed this and I'm wondering this, instead of just you're always this.
Because that takes away their control.
Yeah. And always and never, it's not. So like when coach used to say he's always this, I'll say always. When is it? So I've noticed this, or I'm guessing if some of you are a little bit nervous about this FA Youth Cup, or I'm wondering. So it's the framing of you're hitting the limbic part of your brain rather than hitting a bit of like, boys, we've got to get this done today, and it's just a negative, which then hits their obviously regulation and safety, which we keep coming back to.
Yeah. So what was that? What was your wings again? Wondering.
Imagine, notice, guessing, seeing.
Imagine, notice, guessing, seeing. I love that.
Yeah. And I think coming back to your other question about like the care.
That draws them in as well. Sorry, go on.
Go on. No, it's the big thing for me around with boundaries and behaviours, and is consistency.
Yeah.
And that the big thing for me is people are all right with uncertainty and uncertainty. And if you're consistent with stuff, you're all right. If then there's a inconsistency, you're like, oh, I wonder why that's about. And it's that curiosity of the why rather than going straight into the threat. And that then comes back to the language element of it and seeing things from a different perspective a little bit more. But I think consistency is really key, and also the
But that breeds safety, doesn't it?
Yeah, precisely. And it come out in the PhD like that the players notice if you don't say morning to them, like, oh, I must have read books, so it's like that consistency of behaviours, even though the coaches are only human, but what they pick up and what their perception is and what they see could be totally different to what it is. But that's an element, so it comes back to the language of like asking the questions in an intrusive way that don't put me to threat, that gets this, right, let's have a talk about it. Because I'll see it differently. Like, I say it all the time. I could draw a circle, you could draw a circle, you make it into a face, I'll make it into a sun, but it's a circle.
Yeah.
You know, so it's all about perception.
You're so right there. Yeah, I've been there as a high performance footballer, and anything from the head coach, from a power relation perspective, you're on it. You're thinking, why have they said that to me like that? Why is he talking to them, not me? It's constant, and to assume that isn't happening just because they're footballers and they're getting paid this much. They're human beings, and actually they're quite vulnerable. They've lived quite a sheltered life for the academy systems and up through into elite performance and pro contract. You know, we're talking about vulnerable individuals here, in my experience at least.
Yeah, they're exactly the same, noticing everything, picking up on everything, trying to think why that's occurred, and that's what it comes back to. It comes back to then safety and relationship and knowing and consistency and
Now, I'd love to give you a chance to tell us a little bit about the Euros if you're happy to. But first, I wrote this question down ages ago, and then the conversation's gone on. But something else that I think is really important to hear your perspective on is you've mentioned co-regulation quite a few times. So the idea that one human being can support the regulation of another, and quite often that's through close physicality, if not physical contact. To a degree, would you even a touch or
not necessarily? No. Co-regulation can be just a little fact of a look and a smile and a thumbs up or a certain stages of our obviously child development would be dependent on how much co-regulation is needed. When they get into 18 plus and whatever, then there's more of a mutual regulation. So what's happening from the experiences we've had in childhood and my regulation with my caregivers or my people that are in my circle. So it doesn't have to be. Obviously we do know that touch isn't a powerful thing. It's the chemicals then that's responsive to it, and it helps us calm the nervous system. But sometimes it's just a case of sitting aside something. We know through neuroception we can regulate each other's nervous systems, and emotions are contagious.
I suppose the thing that's on my mind there is is there a dichotomy between that and safeguarding, where coaches actually, and this is necessarily right. I work in education, and we know some of the horrific examples of things that have come out in football and gymnastics, and name other sports here, but. What would concern me is if a coach felt unsafe to be able to support a performer in co-regulating because of a safeguarding agenda.
I think though you've just not got the coach, so the players do it as well. So understanding each other. We know that a high five, a physical touch, a hug is a massive for co-regulation. But we also know that coaches sometimes don't want to put themselves in that situations, and rightly so. But co-regulation doesn't need to just be set as a personal touch. It can be, like I said, like the face, or a word, a trigger word, a smile, just walking round and not even just getting near to them. Because if I'm regulated, I can help to regulate a dysregulated child or an adult. So it's just through neuroception now. Co-regulation don't have to mean that you have to cuddle them and calm them down. Don't think we have to calm down anyway, but cuddle them and kind of regulate their nervous system. But you can be, you'll know that by a text message that comes through, if you're one side of the world and your partner's other side of the world, it still has a regulation effect.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair. And again, that's about creating routines and norms within, if a thumbs up in a certain way means a certain thing, it means more than just me doing a thumbs up because of what you've created as your, unspoken language within the team dynamic.
Yeah, and it's a lot of it is unconscious behaviour.
Yeah.
It's consciously known, but like you say, your nervous system's always picking up on threats.
Yeah.
So if you do a text message, you know, you've got a stable, consistent, safety relationship, it will still come, you will still feel safety. Like me going at Euros, there'll be certain people that send me a message of good luck tonight,
Yeah.
that will affect me a lot more emotionally than majority of other people, because
Yeah.
of the emotional connection with them people.
Yeah. It all boils back down to the same stuff, doesn't it? Connection.
It does.
So, give us a sense of what you're going to be getting up to then. You're heading out to camp on Sunday, you said, I think, before we started recording. What's your few weeks going to look like? You know, are you running sessions? Are you doing classroom stuff? Are you going to be in the dugout? What's it look like? Are you in the changing room?
Yeah, all over me. So I fly out on Sunday. We've got pre-camp in Oslo, and then we play a warm-up game or a send-off game against Sweden on Thursday night, and then I fly with like the advance party on Friday to our hotel. The team then arrive on the Saturday. The hotel, because we get sponsored by Nike,
Nice.
they've done the hotel. So we've got a social area with a lot of things going off. We've got a whole-being area with a lot of things going off. We've been really fortunate to get one of the shift wave chairs from Nike. We've got an outside area with yoga and nature that we've had done. So yeah, we've tried to go very much around. We're literally, our hotel is on the front of a lake with the mountains.
Wow.
So we're trying to provide them with as much of the neuroscience as we can. We've structured it in other little bits, which obviously can't give away.
No.
But yeah, we're trying to provide them with as much of that coming down and revving up, and that recovery spaces and social time to connect, and there's loads of things in the hotel and then at the training ground. But yeah, my routine normally is I'll try and get up and go for a run myself, because it's really pivotal that I need to keep my cup topped up and regulated.
Yeah.
Because I'm normally regulating and sorting out everything else. So I'll normally go for a run, and then I have yoga with the girls on the morning. So we do morning yoga. And then I'll be around training, and then in the afternoon I have some individual slots with certain things, with certain players. We do movement and breath work at night on Breath Relax. In game day, I'm very much around the head coach, in the changing room. So yeah, it's my job roles, human performance. It's not I'm obviously not a psychologist, not a neuroscientist. It's human performance. So I sit into a lot of different teams. We talk about what language we're going to use, what players, stuff. So yeah, it's a big project. I love it. The girls are amazing. The staff's really so forward thinking. So yeah, so it's a little bit different. My roles are slightly different, I think, compared to other people's roles in if they were doing a sports psych role. But yeah.
Sounds fantastic. What chair did you say you got? I missed that. Nike giving you a what?
Nike have got a thing called a shift wave, and if you sit in it and there's different pressure points, and you put like a VR on and it does all meditation and relaxation.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's in our in our whole being suite in downstairs. So yeah.
Yeah. Language of whole being versus well-being. What's the? Oh, can you not tell me?
It's something that I picked for Pippa Grange, and Pippa mentors me, but it's really stuck with me in the sense of like, I feel like when you talk about mental health and well-being, it's seen as like this thing that you've got to fix, when if you actually understand about what I need to provide myself to really be present in the world and be able to feel and think and act and be, and take these experiences in and understand how I experience the experiences, I think that's whole being.
Yeah, interesting. I like that. And there's sort of perhaps there's a wider stigma, stereotype attached to mental health and well-being, and people are looking for things that are wrong rather than focusing on just being as right as possible.
Yeah, and I feel like as well we come back to that word of mental and well-being, and it seems as two operate things, when actually the whole being is around the whole person, and understanding how it's all connected, and understanding the fact of, it's not just about how you feel, it's about how you interact with the world and how your nervous system interacts with the world and how you engage in them communities and other bits and stuff, and what you experience, what you feel, all that side of it, rather than just, you know, focusing on my mental health and well-being or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
I just like the different lens on it to stimulate some more thought about how we connect the brain and the body.
Yeah, makes sense. You justified it really well.
Thank you.
Sally, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate you, and I'm sure our listeners will as well. Wishing you all the very best, you and the girls, when you head out to Switzerland. I've got like a new second team off the back of this.
We're the opening game of the Euros, so you've got to watch.
Have you got the opener now? I meant to ask whether you've got the opener. That's fantastic. Well, that must be on. That we must have that on telly. So yeah, people need to watch that. We've all got a new focus outside of England. Although interestingly conflicting if you do meet England. Well, for you and the head coach. But yeah.
No, it'll be interesting. But yeah, we'll see how we get on.
Brilliant, Sally. Thanks so much for your time.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, Marcus.